Before I get started with this video, I just want to make clear that I am not a financial advisor and I'm not giving financial advice. I'm just telling you what I am doing with my money. You're free to do whatever you want. I'm going to tell you what I'm doing with my money and why I'm doing it, but what you do, that's your business. If you earn money or lose money, that's your benefit or detriment. I'm just telling you what I'm doing. Okay, with that out of the way, I'm telling you right now that I am getting out of the dollar in all of its incarnations. And I'm getting into the euro across the board. All of my financial assets, negotiable assets that were dollar denominated, I have pulled them out and I'm in the euro. And let me explain why. It doesn't take a genius to realize that what the American financial authorities are doing is just fucking insane. They are printing money like there's no tomorrow, and they are embarking on a whole bunch of spending programs that there's just not enough money for it, okay? I mean, there isn't. And what's key is that over the last, I've been rethinking about this issue. What's key is that over the last 13 years or so, since the 2008 global financial crisis, a lot of money has been pumped into the economy by way of quantitative easing. I mean, basically money printing, right? But it's gone into intangible assets. Intangible assets like stocks, bonds, into intellectual property, copyrights, patents, and whatnot. A lot of money has flowed into these intangible assets. And therefore, inflation has not affected the people. It hasn't affected the actual tangible economy, if you will. But that is coming to an end now, isn't it? Yeah, because all of a sudden you got commodities that are going up in price. Lumber rather, is going up in price, and also labor is going up in price. Lumber is going up in price because there have been supply chain issues and a labor shortage, okay? And on the other hand, you have a labor shortage going on in the wider economy because people are getting free money. And so people, especially the people with less education, between getting free money and working, they prefer getting free money and not working. Obvious. So a lot of money is starting to slosh in the economy, and we're starting to see the rise in prices across the board. Food, housing is starting to get more expensive. Everything is getting more expensive, and labor is getting more expensive. And we're going to see more of that. As I've explained in my webinars, you see, the United States cannot really raise interest rates, because if it were to raise interest rates, it would bankrupt the federal government. And the federal government would default on treasury bonds. If it were to default on treasury bonds, the whole global economy would go down the toilet, okay? It can't. And so it will never get to that point. What they'll do is that they'll just simply print more money. And as they print more money, the dollar will lose value and it will hyperinflate. This is inevitable. The more I look at the current situation, and more importantly, the more I look at the political and financial leadership in the United States, the more it's very obvious that they can only see printing as the way to get out of their hole. And printing leads to hyperinflation as surely as clouds lead to rain. Now, why am I getting out of the dollar and getting into the euro instead of cryptocurrencies? Very simple, and let me explain. On the one hand, you have the euro, and on the other, you have cryptocurrency, i.e., I am going to the euro and going away from crypto. Why am I doing this move? Well, first let's look at the euro side of the equation. On the euro side of the equation, I know for a fact that the euro will never hyperinflate because the Germans will never allow it. If you look into German history, you will understand why the Germans are so paranoid about hyperinflation. It wasn't merely Weimar Germany. What happened was that in Weimar German hyperinflation, the people who were most affected were the socio-economic elites, but not quite the elites like the 1%. No, it was the top class, the top, say, 20%. Those were the people who got wiped out. Now, why does this matter? Well, there have been a number of studies over the years in communist countries that has discovered something remarkable. that even when the upper echelons of a society get wiped out financially and even socially, even when they're persecuted, as happened in communist countries, the children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren of those people always wind up rising up again. They always wind up on top once again. Always. And yeah, because what happens is that, see, the better sort of people, the people with more drive, more impulse control, more energy, more brains, they tend to marry one another. And they tend to marry one another, and so they are simply just better. It's hard to accept, but it's true. And so what happened in Germany was that the upper echelon lost all their fortune in 1920s Germany because of Weimar hyperinflation. And those people fell to the lower strata of society. But inevitably, their children and grandchildren rose back up. And those children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren at this point even, well, they will never forget that hyperinflation that happened in Germany. They will never forget it. Because it wasn't merely some historical moment that happened. No, no, no. It was the destruction of Oma's fortune. Yeah? She was a society lady and had to go back down to washing people's clothes for money. See? The German people at the top remember this vividly. And I know because I'm 3/8 German, as I think I've told you before, German-Danish. But my family, some of my family members lost their money in that whole event. And they remember it vividly. And they never want to repeat it. And so this phobia of high inflation, hyperinflation among the Germans is almost a tangible thing. It's to this day, the Germans control the euro. And the German elite, because of this historical and very traumatic memory, will never allow their currency to go down the tube. Never. They will be happy to see Italy, Spain, Portugal, Greece, you know, all of the little countries in Eastern Europe, Slovakia, Czech Republic, and all of them go down the tubes before the euro, their currency, goes down the tubes. And so the Germans will stand behind the euro as a political issue. It's their #1 priority. Then there's the China-Russia situation. As I've discussed repeatedly on my weekly webinar series, China and Russia are allied. And China does not want to have the responsibility of the reserve currency. It's not because that they're, you know, lazy or something like that. They realize that if they have the reserve currency, then they won't be able to devalue in order to kickstart their economy whenever they want to. They don't want the renminbi to become the global reserve currency. They much prefer to have the dollar as the reserve currency or some other currency. On the other hand, you have the Russians, and very recently Vladimir Putin said that the Russian government would no longer have assets in dollars, but they were happy to have assets in other currencies and the euro. They specifically mentioned the euro, and they specifically said that they were happy to have their oil and gas contracts priced in euros instead of dollars. Their rationale being, quite logically, that they didn't see why they should be using the American currency when they are selling their oil and natural gas to Europe. Shouldn't they be using the euro or the ruble in that regard? Now, they don't want to have the ruble as the reserve currency, and frankly, nobody would want to have the ruble as the reserve currency because nobody would trust it. But they would trust the euro. So the fact that the Russians are clearly signaling that they want to price their commodities in euros means that the euro is being passively positioned by the Russians as the possible reserve currency. And since the Russians and the Chinese are so closely allied today, as they are, the fact that Russia mentioned the euro specifically leads me to believe that the Chinese are thinking along the same lines, that the euro would be the ideal reserve currency to replace the dollar. And if that were the case, then the euro would become a lot stronger, a lot more valuable, and the dollar would weaken if all of a sudden both China and Russia decided, hey, we want no dollars, but we're happy with euros. On the other hand, crypto is, you know, it's up and down. There's no clarity about it. See, it goes up, it goes down, it goes up by a lot, it goes down by a lot. This roller coaster, it's funny for a while. It's fun when it's a little bit of money. But when you're talking about a large portion of your patrimony, then it's a different story. See, if you have a net worth of the money you got in your back pocket, okay, then bet on cryptocurrency. It goes up and down. It doesn't really affect you, right? But when you get to be a middle-aged man and you realize that your days of making big money are more likely behind you, and your chances of making really good money in the future are limited, well, then you start to protect your nest egg. You protect it, and you make sure that you don't stick it into anything that might lose a lot of money. I mean, you're willing to give up great gains in order to protect against great losses. And from my point of view, as a 53-year-old man with a limited patrimony, yes, we all have limited patrimony, and more to the point, fewer days ahead of me when I can make big money, and I have small children to take care of, well, then I'm not going to risk my money. Yeah, I'd prefer not to win rather than lose. See? Cryptocurrency might go to the moon, Dogecoin and all the rest of it. Yeah, they might go to the moon, but maybe they don't. Maybe they go into the toilet. Do I want to really risk it? No, I'm not going to risk it. I'd be a fucking idiot if I did. That's why I'm not going to go into crypto, even though I've changed my mind about it. As I've told you before, I used to think that crypto was just bullshit, vaporware, not real. And I've changed my mind. I think that there is a future in crypto. But even so, I don't dare put a majority of my patrimony into crypto. A small bit of money into it, sure. Money that I can afford to lose and it's no big deal, sure. Serious money, money that I depend on, money that generates an income that feeds my family, fuck no. So you see my decision-making process. Now, I personally think that the United States is going to get hit by a crisis of unimaginable proportions. I mean, it's just going straight to it. It's going to a fucking disaster, okay? I do not see this regime continuing for 10, 20, 30 years. Regime in the sense of this polarization on the one hand, and these incredibly stupid decisions that they're making, and not just in the economic front. I'm talking foreign policy, domestic policy, divisive policies. When Biden was giving his speech there, in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and basically saying that all white people are evil. What the fuck is that all about? That's the most divisive shit imaginable. And this shit is just going to continue until it gets to a breaking point. I cannot believe that this kind of bullshit is going to go on for 10, 20, 30 years, and that the United States is just going to stumble along, but more or less intact and more or less functioning. It's not possible. It's going to come to a head. It's going to come to a breaking point. The social, the political, and the financial. And I don't want to be affected by it. Simple as that. So that's why I'm getting into the euro. I far prefer to have a boring financial life that's steady and secure. And that's why I'm not going into crypto. And I do not believe that the current situation in the United States will continue. I think it will break at some point. It has to. I just cannot believe that such a state of affairs that's going on in America right now will continue indefinitely. And I do not believe in Santa Claus. I do not believe in the Deus Ex Machina. I do not believe that some savior with a blazing sword on a white horse will come and save us all. No, I just don't believe that. I think that the United States is going down the tubes. And so that's why I think that the euro is the best bet.